Hey everyone. So now that we're a few weeks into the season, we're starting to really see what teams look like this year. Um, but it's still early, and there are some teams that are at places in the standings that we certainly did not expect them to be before the season started. I think now it's time to play a little game that I played last year, towards the beginning, right at the beginning of the year, like this, called Actually Good. Um, and then the next video will be Actually Bad. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm looking at surprise teams off to surprisingly good starts, and I'm going to go through them and talk about whether I think that they're actually good. Do they belong where they are in the standings, or are they not actually good? And as the season goes on, they're going to fall back to where we thought they were going to be. And then the next video will be Actually Bad, where I take teams off to surprisingly bad starts and do the same thing. Are they actually bad, or are they going to turn it around and end up back where we thought they would be in the standings? So for actually good, let's take a look at, 7 teams here that are off to really surprisingly good starts, and we'll talk about whether or not they're going to continue that. All right, so first, Carolina. Carolina is off to a 4-3-1 start. They're in first place in the Metropolitan Division right now. That's mostly because they've played more games than everyone else. So, Carolina, actually good or not? I'm going to say no. They're not actually good. They're the only reason that they're in first place is because they've played more games than everyone else. They've played 8 games already. Carolina is an average NHL team. They're not a first place team. I don't think they're a playoff team. They're an average NHL team, and they've gotten off to a good start, and they've gotten contributions offensively from a lot of different players that have played really well. Michael Furland has been fantastic for the Hurricanes. They've looked good, but they don't have all the pieces there. Goaltending, I think, over the course of the season is going to become an issue. Their defense is pretty good, but I don't think they have enough weapons on offense to continue to score at a high rate. Michael Furland is not going to score 40 goals this year. He's a good player. He's somebody who's going to probably score at least 20. Might get to 25, but he's not going to score 40. Justin Williams is up there in age. They don't have the pure goal scoring weapons up front. So Carolina eventually is going to drop down to a borderline playoff team, probably out of the playoffs. Montreal is off to a 4-1-2 start. Are they actually good or not? I cannot call Montreal actually good with that defense. They have Carey Price, which gives them a chance. That having an elite goaltender like that always gives you a chance, and they're playing much better offensively than I thought they would. Goal scoring generally lately has been an issue for Montreal. They've been pretty good this year. But with that defense, I cannot watch look at that defense and see what they look like 1 through 6 and call them actually good. I can't see that not coming back to bite them at some point. So I think Montreal finds themselves much closer to 500 in the very near future, and they've gotten off to a great start, but I really don't see that continuing. I think they're probably going to get their 4th loss before they get their 6th win, and at that point they'll be like 5-4-2, and they'll be back towards 500. And then as the season goes on, we're going to find out that Montreal isn't all that great of a team. Ottawa, projected to be the worst team in the league by many people, me included. I really thought they would, without a doubt, be the worst team. 4-2-1 to start the season. Not a bad start for Ottawa. Are they actually good? No, they're not actually good. Yes, they've had a good start. Their young kids have played really well, surprisingly well. They've got a lot of guys that you've probably never heard of before, and they're playing pretty good hockey. But they've lost Brady Tkachuk for a month. He's one of their best players. I do not trust Craig Anderson in goal at all. There are probably only two or three other starting goaltenders in the league that I trust less than Craig Anderson. So I do not expect him to continue to play well at a high level for the entire season. There's just too many kids. The thing with young teams like Ottawa has is they can go on, they can have really good streaks, but consistency is the issue. Young teams like that and kids, with little to no NHL experience, with that many of them in the lineup, they might play well for a stretch, but then they're going to play really, really bad for a stretch because young players like that do not play consistently well. So Ottawa has started the season on a hot streak, but expect a cold streak in the near future, and then they'll turn into the team that we all thought they were. Colorado 5-1-2 to start the season. They are actually good. Colorado is really surprising me this year with how good they are. They were a playoff team last year as a wild card team, but with the emergence of St. Louis, with Dallas presumably getting better, I thought that Colorado might be a team that takes a bit of a step back and drops out of the playoffs. No, they are actually good. They've got a really, really good young core of players. They've got a good mix of veteran guys who have been around for a while, like Gabe Landeskog. Nathan MacKinnon's still young, but he's been in the league for a number of years now. He's an MVP, candidate type player. They've got a really good roster there, and Joe Sakic has done a tremendous job over the last couple of years from taking this team from the laughingstock of the league to being not only a playoff team but one of the better teams in the Central Division. So I don't think Colorado is going to stay this good all season long. I don't think they're up there with Winnipeg and Nashville, but they're a good team. Expect to see them in the playoffs, and I've been really impressed with what I've seen from the Avalanche. They are actually good. The Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim, I picked them to have a really bad year this year. They got embarrassed in the playoffs last year by San Jose. Then they didn't do really anything to better their team in the offseason. They're an old team to begin with. They had a ton of injury problems at the start of the season and still now. I thought for sure this had disaster written all over it. This is finally going to be the year that Anaheim just tanks. And they're off to a 5-2-1 start. So that obviously is not the case. John Gibson has been fantastic. I'm going to say that Anaheim is actually good. I was wrong about the Ducks. Now, they're obviously not, it's not going to be all great things all season long, but I think the Ducks are actually still a pretty good team. And despite, they've proven that despite the age and despite the injuries, they're able to overcome it, and they're getting contributions from enough players that they can still win games with key guys out, and when those guys come back, they'll be even better. So I'm going to say that Anaheim is actually good, mostly because their goaltending is fantastic, and they're getting contributions from some unexpected sources. Vancouver was projected to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, and they're off to a 5-3-0 start. Are they actually good? I am not going to say that Vancouver is actually good because Vancouver did the exact same thing last season. If you remember back to the beginning of last year, Vancouver got off to a really hot start. They won a lot of games in the first month of the season last year, and everyone was like, ooh, keep an eye on Vancouver. Maybe something's happening here. And then as the season wore on, they became the Vancouver that we thought they would, and they ended up being one of the worst teams in the West. Don't expect anything different this year. They've gotten off to a pretty good start for sure, but this isn't going to keep up. There are too many holes in the lineup. I don't trust the goaltending. I don't trust the defense. I don't trust that they can keep scoring goals. There's a lot missing in that lineup, and Vancouver eventually is going to become the team that we thought they were. And while they've had a nice start, it's not going to continue all season long. And lastly, the Chicago Blackhawks. Chicago is off to a 4-1-2 start. They finished dead last in the Central last year, even though last in the Central would be, if they were in any other division, they certainly wouldn't be last. But they're still in the Central Division, and it's still a very, very difficult division to play in. There are a lot of good teams. So I am not going to call Chicago actually good. They're much like Carolina. They're an average NHL team. They have some really good pieces there. They're playing better than they did last year, but I don't trust them yet. I'm not ready to call them actually good. I just think that how are they going to make the playoffs? Because who isn't? Of those 7 teams in the Central, assuming only 4 of them make the playoffs, although maybe this year 5 might, because the Central is significantly better than the Pacific. So 5 might make it from the Central this year, but still, who's not? Chicago has got to be one of the teams that doesn't, because you've got to think that Nashville and Winnipeg are locks for the playoffs. Colorado's off to a great start. St. Louis, I mean, they haven't had a great start, but they've got so much talent there, you've got to think that they're going to turn it around. Dallas is looking to make the playoffs. Minnesota, I haven't talked about Minnesota yet. Like, somebody's not making the playoffs in the Central, and it's going to be not a bad team, but there are going to be at least a couple of teams on the outside looking in. Chicago, I think, is still going to be one of those teams because there are just flat out better teams in the Central. So that's what that's what I've got. All these teams are off to really good starts. The only actually good teams, I think, are Colorado and Anaheim. They're going to be better than I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. I think they end up being better than that and probably making the playoffs. So, maybe not Anaheim. If only 3 get in from the Pacific, Anaheim might be on the outside looking in, but it's a long year. We'll have to wait and see. They could be the 3rd team. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see, but that's what I think. Those are the teams I think that are actually good. The rest of them I think are just off to hot starts and things. They'll come back to earth as the season goes on. So that's what I've got. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you guys soon.